So an intro here for Marianna Milkis is a project manager at Starbucks Global Academy at Arizona State University and a brand strategy consultant at Ask Edie LLC in Phoenix, Arizona. Her lifelong quest for authentic, inspired, and aligned living has driven her 3/4 of the way around the world to interview exceptional people from all walks of life, teach yoga, host a human design podcast, sprinkle mindfulness into the corporate world, and develop a philosophy around better ways to work and be human. Passionate about individual empowerment, Marianna is a hashtag I am remarkable workshop facilitator, which is a Google initiative for women and minorities aimed at building confidence with self-promotion. So welcome to the virtual Creative Mornings stage, Marianna.
I'll make a quick remark before I start, is that I attended Creative Mornings in Moscow back when I lived there, like over almost a decade ago. And then attended a few of these events since I moved to Phoenix, attended some in New York. So it's just really great. I love this community, and it's really great to be here with you today. So let me see, it sometimes gets a little tricky to share between Google and Zoom. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully we can get started. You see presentation, or you see my speaker notes?
I can see your presentation.
Okay, excellent. All right, so yeah, thank you for being here. I was very intrigued and excited about this topic, and I would like us to talk today about the vision of matriarchy for the 21st century, and also address some potential misconceptions, or just kind of take a bird's eye view at what it means and how we might want to look at it. So a few words about me. I'm a mother. I am a breadwinner in the family. So I'm married. I have a child, but I kind of consistently make more money. I consider myself a global citizen because I have lived in Russia and United States and several places. I traveled extensively, and I really appreciate different ways to live, and the diversity, I guess, of human experience around the world. I am a brand strategy consultant, so I leverage my background in marketing and copywriting, and my 5-year startup stint co-founding a fashion tech company to help brands define their positioning, launch, validate their ideas, do content marketing, and so on and so forth. I'm also a project management professional, so I'm a PMI certified project management professional, and hashtag I'm remarkable facilitator. A couple of words on that. That is like Lauralee introduced, that is a Google initiative that offers free workshops for women and minorities, but also honestly anyone interested, to strengthen self-promotion skills and get rid of that kind of imposter syndrome that I personally am very familiar with. So that was pretty interesting for me to take the workshop, and that's what kind of encouraged me to become a facilitator. So if you're interested in learning more, I'll leave my contact information at the end. And like I said, those are free. Those are hosted by certified facilitators like myself. They can be corporate, they can be for any type of group. So a really interesting thing. So here's what I would like to talk about today. First, let's take a closer look at what is actually matriarchy, how it is defined, and then we'll talk about we can do it and how we're actually doing it, a lot of it already on a day-to-day, in which way, and then about where we need to go further, and just wrap up with some like I said, some bird's eye view thoughts on that. So what is matriarchy? So, we like to, there's a lot of this kind of dichotomy thrown around with patriarchy and matriarchy. And basically it's one of those terms that is very broad, and can be used in not always, I guess, quite correctly. So generally, how is it understood? It's ruled by women. We're thinking about Amazons, obviously. We're thinking about kind of this like absolute freedom of movement. On some extreme ends, it goes, we don't need men altogether, which I'm absolutely not. That's not my spiel. So, but a lot of it is kind of this like absolute unlimited power of women on all levels of society and government and so on and so forth. Now let's look at the actual definition. So, it's a good place to start always. Merriam-Webster dictionary defines matriarchy as a system of social organization in which descent and inheritance is traced through the female line. An example of this that in terms of descent, it could be found in Jewish culture, where basically my mother is Jewish, so I'm considered Jewish, and then my son is Jewish because I'm his mother. If his dad would have been Jewish and I wasn't, then he wouldn't have been considered that. But also, you cannot consider Judaism like a matriarchal society for other reasons. And then basically family group, state government is ruled by a matriarch. So that is something that I'll zoom in a little bit on a little bit further. And then Britannica kind of sections it out a little bit more, saying that in matriarchy, or first of all, they define it as a hypothetical society, alluding to the fact that there actually has not been a true like long-term established broad matriarchal society in the known history. So any of all of that is more like hypothetical. Amazons is just something that we're kind of imagining. We don't really have facts to confirm that is what that they were what we think they were. However, there are a couple of societies that are of communities that are matriarchal at the moment. I'll refer to them later. And so Britannica talks about in this hypothetical matriarchal society, female leaders, if female matriarch has absolute authority over family, and then the community is run by the council of such matriarchs. There is a theory that sometimes floats around in these conversations about the scientific term is unilineal cultural evolution, basically talking about kind of complete this evolution throughout history from complete promiscuity and kind of everyone doing whatever they wanted to matriarchy to patriarchy. Well, that is not true. That did not happen. The societies didn't evolve that way. So it's not really a thing. So society organization kind of existed, and it was never that just straightforward kind of process. So let's sum it up. There are three kind of pillars of the true definition of matriarchy that exists when we think about this term. It's descent. So the descent is traced through female lineage. Inheritance is passed down from mother to daughter, and so on and so forth. And then freedom of choice in sexual relationships. But that means for both men and women. For verbal divorce is a thing that exists. So basically, if a woman says, I don't want to be with this man anymore, and then she just can kind of walk away. Work, decision making, and so on. So that is what is matriarchy per the definition. A few examples that exist in right now in the world is the Khasi tribe in Northeast India, I guess the Khasi community, and that's what they have. So basically, and then the Masua tribe in Yunnan and Sichuan provinces in Southwest China. So what they have is basically women are running the community. They pass down their inheritance to their daughters. They kind of have this, you know, any man that they want, they can invite to their bedroom. They have children. They grow them together. They raise them together, and then they kind of do that way. So that's the real sort of, that's what matriarchy looks like in those few places in the world that have that at the moment. But let's now talk about sort of what's going on here and why it is not so far-fetched to say that we are kind of halfway there, in a weird way that might not be what we might expect. So we really are doing a lot of it already. So we talked about this a lot. So factors of matriarchy: descent, um, inheritance, and choice of partners, careers, and lifestyles. And all of these things, not broadly, but all of these things, there's no reason, there's kind of no reason for them not to exist. And they do exist oftentimes. So when a woman makes money, she can, I have a college savings fund, I have a 401k, and my son is my primary kind of, he'll get my money if something happens to me, right? And I'm free to choose my career, I'm free to choose my path in life. I was free to choose where to move or not to move, what jobs to take. Of course, there's a foundation that's required to make that happen. But all in all, women now are not really told what to do. They're not limited in their choices in a way that we would really think if the society was like truly patriarchal. However, there are definitely things that still require a lot of work. And those three things are representation in leadership. So basically, glass ceiling does exist, and that exists for a number of factors that I think are all interconnected. So it's not just because women are not allowed in positions of power, but well, first of all, there are plenty. Second is that these next two factors here on the slide contribute a lot to that. And I'm not going to go too far into detail, but self-promotion, basically a lot of, many women, especially in kind of more marginalized communities, are raised in that paradigm of kind of submissiveness, and they're not shown what they're capable of. And then the second one is social infrastructure. So starting from opportunities, something that's, very top of mind for me with a toddler, childcare, and I'm definitely privileged and blessed in that sense. But the child care, maternity leave, things that US falls brutally behind the rest of the world, those contribute incredibly to the fact that women are held back in what they are able to achieve. And another way in which we are doing it is not so fortunate. But as we mentioned earlier, a big point of the idea, the concept of matriarchal society is this collectivism. It's when children are raised collectively. It's when there's this kind of extended, so more of a communal living rather than a nuclear family unit that is separated. And that is this gap that exists right now. So there are plenty of households that are, single family households, specifically. So here on the chart, you can see the difference between US and world, which is kind of, I found it really interesting. But US has 23% single family households. The broadly across the world, they average 7% by country. And 80% of those single family households are headed by a single mother. So, there's your scenario of a matriarchal family unit, right? But is this an ideal scenario? Well, it could have been a better scenario if there was more of that communal support. However, in US, extended family households are very, very rare, versus in the world, an extended family household means grandparents, and larger families living together, or in close proximity. Um, in US, basically, we're really isolated, and that plus the lack of the social infrastructure, with childcare, with some additional support, with medical insurance, and so on and so forth, that leads to kind of this disconnect where you technically are a matriarch of the family, but it's really, really hard. Versus in if we had that support, and if we had those extended family units, it could have been much easier and it could make more sense. For example, in Russia, where I'm from, it's very, very normal, for grandparents. It's kind of even like it's the norm across the board for grandparents to spend a lot of time with their grandkids and basically babysit their grandkids until they go to kindergarten. It doesn't happen here. And there are other factors, with free healthcare and so on. So here we kind of have this a framework of women run a lot of things, especially on the household level, and another thing that women run is the household itself. So Alison Daminger from Harvard did research on that was interesting. But basically, this idea of cognitive labor, that is very, very heavily, it's completely kind of overtaken by women. That just women do it in households, even full households. The idea, this comes down to anticipating needs of the household, identifying options, fulfilling them, making the decision, and monitoring progress. And so decision making has kind of been equalized much more between partners in a family unit. But this process of anticipating needs and then collecting options, that still falls on women largely. And here again, you kind of rule the world, in the family unit, but this is a lot of work. So what I guess I'm saying is, I guess kind of summarized here. I'm not going to read it all, but that's an extract from a science fiction book that I threw in there. And basically, the idea is that women rule and women do the fighting, and women farm and provide and everything. And what do men do? As little as they possibly can. I'm not saying that's across the board. I love men. I'm not I'm not hating by in any means, but I think that we need to be careful kind of about what we wish for, because in certain things, if we think about women rule, ruling is not easy. And more so, I would say that ruling is not always desired. Like in the situation that I just was, which I didn't even think about like including this example in here, but because I didn't know. But in the situation where we ran out of gas in my husband's van on a freeway, I didn't want to be a decision maker. I didn't want to get us out of trouble, right? And so I understand that this can be kind of a somewhat controversial view, I guess, in today's narrative. But so a good leeway into the vision for new matriarchy, right? Or rather, I use this word because that's our topic, but rather the new society structure that we might want to explore. So the problem is not really that women are better than men. Like I said, it's that we need to eliminate this skewed power structure to achieve balance for the sakes of communities and world as a whole. The paradigm that has kind of got us into quite serious mess that exists right now with ecological situation, with this strive for efficiency and race to the bottom that excludes so many communities. All that stems from a particular paradigm, the extractionist, the sort of efficiency paradigm, and that does need to change because we just cannot continue in that way. I mean, the bottom is the bottom. Once you race to the bottom, you can't get any lower. So a bunch of I kind of like to read different like dystopian novels, and a bunch of that stuff comes to mind when I think about, if we take this efficiency to the max, if we take this competition and kind of ignoring the broader view, and more of a yin yang component of life and nature, um, just nothing good is going to happen. So in that sense, if we think about again the yin yang, there's the energy that is creative and powerful and considered masculine, but I just think that each of us has this yin yang inside of us, and we just kind of contribute like a puzzle to the broader whole. And then there's the energy that is more grounding, more contemplative, more community oriented. And again, Amazons lived as a community. That's why they were able to have this matriarchal social structure that we're talking about. So I believe that the paradigm shift that is needed is from individualism to community, whether it be our local small communities, which occupies a lot of my thoughts these days, is how to empower on a literally neighbor to neighbor level, mutual support and mutual connection, because that has started to fall off with social media and all that isolation. From competition to egalitarian collaboration, from the only right path to succeed. So, you want to make money, go in finance. There's, career wise, there's a limited path if you want to be well off. I mean, teachers who shape the future of our children get paid ridiculous little money compared to, finance people who don't really do that, at least on the level that really contributes to the well-being of society. So I think that there needs to be more diverse paths to dignified living than there is right now. Internally, we need to shift from external validation to internal power, not searching for, again, this outside validation of who we are and what we do, but developing, and it's a muscle that can be developing that feeling of internal power, confidence, strength, capability. And then we also really need to move from silos, which is basically the idea that each kind of scientific sphere tries to solve problem just with the tools and concepts and understanding of their sphere. So if we're talking about, economists will only try to solve things with economy, and they won't think about social aspects. Doctors will only try to think about, doctors and so on. So I think that the pandemic situation encouraged that a little bit, at least it just forced people to think more in a systematic way, but that still exists wildly when you think about policymaking, when you think about how governments and corporations approach problems and solving problems. And so the shift needs to be into systems, into more holistic view. And a lot of this, I think, comes, so how we can achieve this shifted paradigm is through basically better connection and valuing not just this one-sided type of personality, not one-sided gender, not one-sided set of education and where you're from and where you went to school and who you know and what you do, but valuing the diversity of experiences. And that diversity of experiences inevitably comes with diversity of genders and diversity of where you're from, again, where you grew up. We need to fuel capability, so create that foundation to enable capability, regardless of what gender you are, regardless of what where you're from, and create that foundation for everyone to understand their potential and to be able to achieve it. I think from there, once the foundation is there, I mean, it's ultimately up to everyone. I mean, not every woman will want to rule her community or to rule a corporation. Some women are perfectly happy, and that is they want to do this, to be in their family and take care of their family. And I think that's another thing that bugs me to no end, but I keep hearing women who are very successful, for example, in tech companies, in the director levels, and they're saying, hey, I feel like I am betraying the feminism, and I'm betraying the everything I worked for, because now I'm 35 and I want to have children and I want to stay at home for a few years. But that is natural if that happens. It won't happen for everyone, but that is something that we should embrace. And there's still a lot of pressure that, like, to be a true, to be an advocate for matriarchy, to be an advocate for feminism, you have to be this career woman. And that just always rubs me such a wrong way, because I think we can have it all, and not everyone wants to have it all. Some people want to have whatever they want to have, and I think that is also something that is lacking in our culture, is this embrace and not thinking that this certain career path or this certain life choice is above the other. And that is this flexibility and this kind of softness and adaptability is a more female trait. So if we think about it in again, this matriarchal, patriarchal opposition, which, as I hope is clear, I don't necessarily like to do. I think it's more about the character qualities and the embracing the diversity. I really like this quote by Marianne Woodman. I think it was written like in the 60s, so it's kind of a second wave feminism author. And she's saying, now I think we're starting to get free of the old matriarchy and free of the patriarchy. In other words, we're entering into conscious relationship with our mother and father complexes. As a planet, we're moving towards maturity. We're trying to find out who we are when we're not possessed by those complexes. I think that is an incredibly important message that I would like to kind of leave us with, that let's think of it in a more holistic way, and this holistic way and this inclusive way, and finding the way we can support each other and support our mutual goal of better communities, better living, more responsible way to live. It starts with that. So wrapping up, today we reviewed what matriarchy really means, defined areas that still need lots of work and attention, uncovered the flip side of this quest for matriarchy, and outlined an alternative empowered path forward. So here are a few ways to get in touch with me if you would need to. A few things that you might want to get in touch with me is to request a free I'm Remarkable workshop for your organization or for your group, for your co-working space, whatever it is. A corporate mindfulness presentation focused on remote work. I've done those for Phoenix Startup Week and ASU. Brand strategy consultation, and then project management consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. So if anyone has questions or anything that this is like stirred up even that you want to share with us, go ahead and unmute yourself, or you can also add it to the chat. But I like hearing your voices. So go ahead. Let's chat about this some more.
And if you completely disagree with what I said, please also speak.
Any thoughts?
No questions. No thoughts.
I'll bite, I guess.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. I definitely very much feel like in order to fix silos and a lot of problems that we have to learn to collaborate and to become more and more of a community. And I mean, another way to say that is like, we can't fight hate with hate. It's like, we can't fight the patriarchy with this like hyper opposite matriarchy. So we can find a way to respect all, no matter where we're at, and to collaborate. Like, spot on. Like, everything inside me is all giddy right now. So thank you.
Thank you. I have a question to ask to the community. So can you think of any situation or, when you interacted with others and they made you feel like you really matter and your voice really matters and you have the strength and the power? I know it's kind of a broad question, but I'm just curious to hear if someone can think of an experience like that.
Let me say, I worked overseas for 13 years doing HR. And I was in China, but working with global teams. And what was really interesting about that was the biggest challenges weren't me as an American dealing with the Chinese, because that actually was a little bit easier. Like, you kind of see the differences immediately. I think some of the real challenges came with the people that looked like me, but were from different countries with very different cultures. Americans get things done differently than people from England, people from New Zealand, France, Russia. And so a lot of my work in employee relations was helping people solve problems. And, we often talk about the golden rule: treat people how you would like to be treated. The thing I really learned from doing expatriate management, the thing I would tell people was the platinum rule: treat people how they want to be treated. And it's challenging, especially when you're working with very complex multicultural teams. I mean, it took me years to start seeing patterns, and I really had to read a lot of books on cross-cultural management to start figuring out how different groups, how they like to communicate, and then even factoring in those individual personality things. But it really pays off when you think about the platinum rule: treat people how they would like to be treated, as opposed to what you necessarily want. I'm someone, I like getting a lot of communication in email, reading, having time to process. There's a lot of people that like to just come in and spew out information and do a data dump and have that conversation. So great presentation, by the way, but I think it's something to consider.
That's a great tip. Yeah, I'll remember that. Yeah, I think there's a whole kind of, there's a long way to go in terms of corporate communication, especially now that the workplace is becoming more diverse. And I think it's both from, I think it's both ways. I think it's also people themselves. There's still a lot of fear and a lot of kind of wire walking from people, from workers, from management to individual contributors, in being able to get that out there, to basically get themselves out there in an authentic way. Because I think we are very conditioned, like a manager has to be this way. I have to be this way. And this comes down to this long history of uniformity and uniform expectations, that is very also explicit in American culture, just coming from, different country and seeing this different ways. But this expectation of extrovert behavior, of selling yourself, this is so far. I basically had to learn all those skills. And I'm an introvert. I can put on a show, I can do it, but for a short period of time. But it took me probably 3-5 years of living in the United States to be able to comfortably have an interview in a way that is expected from me, and not appear, under. And I know there are a lot of conversations like this happening, and that's also something that contributes to this mismatch. But it's the upbringing. It's kind of goes down to how people are socialized early on, and how they're shown or not taught to express their value. And like women might often be a little softer, but also there are men who are softer in their kind of approach and behavior, and discriminating based on that, on how you show up, without really understanding who you are as a person, what value you might bring to the team, to the group. I think that still exists. I'm very grateful for ASU, because I feel like that's the place that for the first time, I can really show up about like 98% of my authentic self and be appreciated for it. I don't think we need to show up 100%, because there's still personal things that just need to be personal, and there's nothing wrong with that. But being able to really see the value, express who you are fearlessly, and then from the management and team perspective, to see the value of this difference. I think that's a two-sided skill that needs to be developed on a corporate level, and then individually, through upbringing, and this through training and so on. We have any other thoughts? Do we have any opposite thoughts? I would love to hear that too.
Just going to add a concurrent thought, but we could break for an opposite thought if that's the case.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. To Glenn's point too, what you had talked about, like this idea of a platinum rule, and what you were just sharing, Marianna, is this idea of communication with empathy is what I call it, that we don't communicate the way I want to express, but the way that person we're talking to needs to hear, and meets them where they need to be met. And yeah, it's very much exactly what it says, communication with empathy. And if we could do more of that, then I think a lot of communities and all of our issues we're working with right now can solve. It's just this idea that we actually prefer others over ourselves in that sense.
That's very important.
All of this now conversation has reminded me of my current job, and I was just looking through all of the names on here to see if I worked with one. I actually just got a new job at Berkadia, so I'm done at my current job this next week, and all these things are coming up in my exit interview. And I just had a meeting with my boss yesterday of like, we know that there's all these pain points, and it's interesting to see where we are right now. Just, a year and a half ago, what our culture looked like, and now a year and a half into a pandemic, what what the world looks like. And so a lot of people have been leaving their jobs, working for themselves. And, I think it'll be interesting to see all the studies that come from this time, because it will be interesting to see, like when you pulled up the graph of single family homes and single moms, and what that looks like. What I think it'll be interesting to see what's happened in the last year also, just because I know in the workplace things have changed drastically. And I think managers and higher ups in companies are starting to pay attention to people leaving and wanting to know, what are these pain points, how can we make a difference. And um, yeah, I think that a lot of that plays into just what we've been talking about, of treating people how they want to be treated. How do you figure that out? What are the, all of these different tests that we can do? What are things that we can learn about people when they start a new job? And so that's just what my brain just started going into, of what could have been done better for me to stay in my current role, and what can I do now at this new company, so that I don't get into this pit again. So yeah, anyway, just wanted to share with you what that's all stirring up in my brain. Does anyone else have anything that you've been thinking about, or anything that you thought about during Marianna's speak or talk? I mean,
well, thank you for the lecture. It's very, very well done. It has it's this is not technically on topic really, but it did come up this week, and I find it very interesting how these two kind of go together. My generation, we are self-reliant, sort of, we're kind of juggling everything. We're being the mom, we're being the executive, we're doing this, we're doing that. And in conversation this week, it occurred to us, with senior parents living in Sun City, when there's a divorce or a death, women from that generation right now, that that are in their 80s and 90s, flock and take care of the men, because they're used to cleaning and they're used to cooking, because that was the role that they had. And how is retirement going to look from the individualism to community when we hit our 80s? Because I can't see these women, my generation, cleaning and cooking and doing everything what's happening right now. It's one of the other women had said, you missed the toilet, you can clean it, type of a situation, because we're just not in that role anymore. Sure. So it's going to be interesting to see what dignified living looks like when we're, retired.
That's a very good thought. Yeah, I think it's, so like I said, I'm a breadwinner in the family. My husband does, but he cleans kind of more than I do. At the same time, he is very, very handy. He works construction, he works on cars, so he likes to do it, and he does it. He does stuff around the house, like he just rebuilt a shower. He does, I mean, it's work, of course, but he rebuilt the car. I love cooking. So it's my meditation, and I cook a lot. And when I don't cook, we're fine eating Trader Joe's meals or getting takeout. So I think there's like now I think we have so many opportunities. First, I'm a huge proponent of outsourcing too. Like but I just bought a robot vacuum because I figured that I don't want to expect that from my husband, because although he does do a lot of vacuuming and stuff, but I also want to clean house. So what do? I run the vacuum every other day, and then I wash the floor, or I'll have someone come out and do it. If I then there's a lot of ways to do it. If you don't like cooking, well, first of all, I think one thing that we should really spend time on, and honestly as early as possible, and is to really figure out what do we really like to do, and then sit down with a partner if we have a partner and be like, okay, I love cooking, so I'm perfectly fine taking that, kind of owning that as like a project manager, right? Like owning that part, and I'll either cook myself or I'll figure out what we're gonna eat, and maybe a couple of times a night he'll do it and he'll make a tuna sandwich, right? And then he doesn't expect me to fix a car because he likes to do it, it's his thing. And then everything else can be outsourced, or something like that. So I think we do have that flexibility now, and I think that's great. But understanding, there is, you live in a house, so there is something that you probably more or less enjoy doing, or can at least kind of take on as a thing that is meditative, or is kind of homey, cozy. Maybe it's cleaning, maybe it's decorating, maybe it's gardening, maybe it's cooking, whatever it is. But I think that in our like kind of run life, something that we're missing on many levels is this just time and space to give ourselves to sit down and figure out, what do I really like to do, which parts of home duties stress me out to no end, and which I'm fine with. And, I'm fine washing my son's toilet. Like, I don't know, like something that might not be socially kind of obvious, that you might be okay with it. Like that might be fine. But if it stresses you out, it's also important to recognize things that really stress you out, even in jobs. Like at some point, copywriting started stressing me out, like on large scale. So I still am the primary contact for my clients, and I'm very, very diligent and incredibly picky with my freelancers, but I have freelancers do the writing for me, then I do the editing. And that made the whole process so much better for me, because now I'm not stressed and don't develop this resentment towards the activity that I'm, taking on. So I think it's a more internal, like mental reflective process, but it would ultimately help each of us to feel better about our lives and what we do.
Yeah, I think back, Jennifer, I was thinking of my grandma and my mom and how the family has like, come around and helped her. And like you were just talking about, Marianna, the robot vacuum, and how
I love that thing.
Yeah, it'll be so interesting to see in the next, 10, 15 years, 20 years, what comes about that will make us kind of shrink back to that individualism where you can do it yourself. If your spouse has passed away, or if you are a single older person, you can have the robot that does it, and you can outsource someone to come and clean, and you can outsource your food prep and that kind of stuff. But it will be, I think, a challenge for a lot of people to bring back that community and still have like the 55 and older living situations where you're getting together and gathering and helping one another, whether you're male or female, and still having like card nights, the social activities. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens the next generation as we age.
Well, we kind of saw a little bit of the transition issues with COVID, as far as getting the older population vaccinated. Some of them don't have computers, some of them don't have cell phones. So to get online and to schedule an appointment was a big issue. So, and not that that's a gender situation, that's just an age situation, but there are differences in how our communities work. And I'm sure it's different in other countries as well, but we're having to face them with the way we proceed with our businesses, with our family, our community. Our, grandparents don't watch kids here. They call them up on the phone and they just, send them a card in the mail. And that just seems to be life in America right now. Maybe that'll change someday.
Yeah. Any other thoughts to add to the conversation? Well, on that note, thank you so much for sharing with us this morning, Marianna, and we appreciate all the effort that you put in to your presentation and just stirring up the thoughts and how we're going to move forward. So thank you all for joining this morning. I appreciate seeing all of your faces and for the participation, and I hope that you guys have a great weekend, and we will see you next month. Talk to you later.